Sacred song that celebrates the light of the world. From the choir of the Eternal Word Television Network and Father Joseph Mary Wolfe, the EWTN Family Christmas Special. This Christmas on EWTN.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Coronavirus crisis. President Joe Biden is set to address the nation. What he's saying about in-home testing. New direction. With Build Back Better on the verge of defeat, Democratic lawmakers switch their focus. 30 years later, a closer look at the collapse of communism in Russia. And message of hope, how one group is helping people overcome addiction. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, December 21st, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. As the U.S. confronts a surge of new coronavirus cases nationwide, President Joe Biden unveils a new plan to combat the Omicron variant.
We should all be concerned about Omicron, but not panicked. If you're fully vaccinated, and especially if you got your booster shot, you are highly protected. And if you're unvaccinated, you're at a higher risk of getting severely ill from COVID-19, getting hospitalized, and even dying.
Among the new administration initiatives are millions of new at-home rapid tests, increased access to administered tests and vaccinations, and new military deployments to support hospitals. All Democrats in the U.S. Senate left for the year without taking up voting rights legislation. They say democracy is under attack and claim minorities face obstacles at the ballot box. Democrats are pledging to fight back against election laws passed in Republican-controlled states.
Across the country, we're witnessing a coordinated assault on the right to vote and even on how elections are conducted, tallied, and potentially decided. A true threat to the ultimate foundation of our democracy.
Senate Republicans have blocked several attempts to bring up the House-passed John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. That bill would set up national standards on voting, redistricting, and campaign finance. Republicans tell EWTN News Nightly what Democrats really want is a government takeover of elections.
They want to federalize elections so they can try to control elections. It has nothing to do with ease of voting. We've had record turnouts in the last number of elections. It's about raw gut power.
Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says the Senate will take up stalled voting rights legislation as early as the first week of January. He has also threatened to try and change Senate rules. That's if Republicans continue to filibuster the bills. Pope Francis has named a new bishop for the Diocese of Gaylord, Michigan today. Father Jeffrey Walsh from the Diocese of Scranton has been appointed bishop. He will succeed retired Grand Rapids Bishop Walter Hurley, who has been serving as the interim apostolic administrator. Father Walsh currently pastors 2 parishes in northeast Pennsylvania. While China is sanctioning 4 members of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. Those targeted are Chairwoman Nadine Menza, Deputy Chairman Nuri Turkel, and 2 other members. The sanctions come in response to U.S. protests against human rights abuses in China, including the most recent U.S. diplomatic boycott of the upcoming Winter Olympics in Beijing. This year marks the 30-year anniversary of the collapse of the Soviet Union. By Christmas Day in 1991, Mikhail Gorbachev had resigned from his position as president of the Soviet Union, and the Soviet hammer and sickle flag was lowered and replaced with the Russian flag. And joining me now to discuss this is Dr. Paul Kengor, professor of political science at Grove City College and author of The Devil and Karl Marx, Communism's Long March of Death, Deception, and Infiltration. Dr. Kengor, always so great to see you. You know, it's so hard to believe that it's been 30 years since the fall of the Soviet Union. I mean, many of us remember that like it was yesterday, but for those who don't, can you refresh our memories and talk a little bit about what led to the collapse and what it signified?
Yeah, hi Tracy, and Merry Christmas to you. Yeah, it was 30 years ago. It was December 1991, and it was on Christmas Day, December 25th, 1991, that Mikhail Gorbachev picked up the telephone, called President George H.W. Bush, and he said, "I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. I am shaking your hand over the telephone, and I want to let you know that I'm resigning my position." And his position at that point was president of what was left of the USSR, the Soviet Union. There was a president also in Russia at that point, Boris Yeltsin, who had been freely elected, the first elected president of Russia in June 1991. So really, Tracy, the only thing that was holding the USSR together was Mikhail Gorbachev. And by resigning on that date, he resigned the Soviet Union. And I think from a Christian perspective, it's just profoundly poignant that this country, this evil empire, this country that declared a war on religion, as Mikhail Gorbachev put it, that tried to ban Christmas of all things, would end peacefully without a shot fired on Christmas Day in 1991.
Yeah, that is so incredible. You know, one thing, though, I find kind of interesting is that I think at the time a lot of people thought the fall of the Soviet Union would eventually lead to the fall of communism altogether. But as we know, that didn't happen. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's a really sad thing. And in fact, I'd back up a little bit more and point out, too, to people that this is the 40th anniversary of when martial law was declared in Poland. That was December 13th, 1981. And that was a major moment for the Polish Pope, John Paul II, for President Ronald Reagan. And the two of them committed after that to doing what they could to save and sustain the solidarity movement in Poland to be the wedge to split the communist bloc. So it was really that in 1981 that led to the events in 1991. So two really important anniversaries this month. But you're right, Tracy. Yeah, going forward, here we are now 30, 40 years after those events, and you have young people in America, millennials in particular, saying favorable things about communism and even saying that they prefer socialism over capitalism in polls. So it's really sad. We won the Cold War, the ideological war against the Soviet Union on the battlefield, or if you will, kind of on the ideological political field. But now we're losing in the United States, where we're facing this really strange kind of American brand of Marxism that involves culture, gender theory, critical theory, even critical race theory. And in many ways, this one's a little harder to fight because people in Eastern Europe, they could see the Berlin Wall, right? They knew what was repressing them. But a lot of people in America, if you tell them they're supporting cultural Marxism or some sort of Marxist-based critical theory or critical race theory, they'll give you this puzzled look and maybe even tell you that you're out of your mind, that you're a conspiracy theorist. But that stuff is going on. It's been going on at our universities, and now, unfortunately, it's seeping out into the larger culture. Archbishop Gomez, by the way, head of the USCCB, did a beautiful job calling out some of this stuff in a couple recent speeches in this past November.
Yeah, Paul, I want to know, why do you think this is resonating so much, Marxism, communism, with the younger generation? You mentioned those polls. I know Axios recently conducted a poll this year, too, and found that 46% of adults 18 to 34 have a negative view of capitalism. So that kind of coincides with what you said. What's sparring all this?
Yeah, I think, honestly, Tracy, they're just not learning this stuff. They're not learning the great things of history, like the collapse of communism, collapse of the USSR. I mean, this is something that right now, 30th, 40th anniversary of these things, ought to be taught in schools. I mean, I teach it to my students at places like Grove City College in Grove City, Pennsylvania, but I don't know how many schools are teaching this sort of thing. And conversely, I don't think they're teaching the negatives about communism. If they read the Communist Manifesto, I don't think they're highlighting the negative things about what the manifesto says. I don't think they're representing it accurately. And I think every high school kid, college kid in America ought to know that this is an ideology that was responsible for over 100 million deaths in the 20th century. But most of them probably think that, fascism, Nazism killed more people. Communism killed more than double the combined death tolls of World War I and World War II. But most young people today, unfortunately, aren't learning that.
Yeah, and you're right. We have got to teach us and really educate younger people about this. Dr. Ken Gore, always great to see you. Thank you for coming on, and Merry Christmas to you and yours.
Same to you, Tracy. Thank you very much. Take care.
Coming up, assessing the damage from the deadly typhoon in the Philippines.
The Register's content is so critically important in the society we're living in now because everything is so secularized. There's an absence of the practice of religion in public life. So all the more important is it for people to be reading the Register so that they can acquire more understanding of our Catholic faith, so that they can be more and better influenced by the values of the gospel that affirm true human dignity in every stage of life, and how we can understand that the human person created in the image and likeness of God reveals the goodness, truth, and beauty of God in the world. I've appreciated the catechetical benefits of the content of the Register. It presents very clear Catholic teaching in a way that is easily digestible.
To get 6 free issues, order online at ncregister.com/TV or call 800-421-3230 and mention code TV. That's ncregister.com/TV or 800-421-3230 and mention code TV. Call or click today. The National Catholic Register. Read faithfully.
Festive hearts lift their praises to the heavens with Christmas devotion and proclaim the good news of Christ's birth. It's a special gift this holiday from the San Juan Children's Choir in Puerto Rico. A new generation united in celebration. The San Juan Children's Choir presents Always Christmas here on the Global Catholic Network.
New Zealand is altering its COVID-19 recovery plans to guard against the Omicron variant.
Our immediate job right now must be to slow it down and to delay it from entering the New Zealand community for as long as we possibly can.
New Zealand will decrease its vaccination intervals between an initial coronavirus shot and a follow-up booster from 6 to 4 months. The country will also postpone its border reopening to the end of February. A Filipino leader has viewed the catastrophic damage from last week's deadly typhoon, which swept across the country, the center of the country. Vice President Leni Robredo visited 3 affected areas today. The storm has left at least 375 people dead, hundreds more injured, and at least 50 missing. Local officials are pleading for food and other recovery aid. A court in East Timor has sentenced a former priest to 12 years in prison for sexual abuse. 84-year-old Richard Dashbach was a missionary in a remote area of the country for decades. He was once esteemed for saving lives during the country's independence fight back in the 1990s. Both the verdict and sentence were handed down today. He could face charges here in the U.S. In Britain, the Christmas plans for Queen Elizabeth II have been changed due to the COVID-19 Omicron variant. The Queen will not make a traditional visit to the royal Sandringham estate. Instead, the 95-year-old monarch will remain at Windsor Castle. Coronavirus infections in the UK are up by 60% in 1 week due to the new variant. A Catholic group that recently turned 100 years old is united in prayer for the spiritual welfare of those who work on the sea. The Apostleship of the Sea changed its name to Stella Maris when it turned 100 years old last year. Pope Francis often prays for those who work on the sea, given that life is often lonely and difficult, but the work is so important to people around the world. Joining us now from Rome is Father Bruno Ceccheri, director of Stella Maris International. Father, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. Can you tell us a little bit more about your organization and the work that it does?
Yes, the Stella Maris Network, or as it was known, the Apostleship of the Sea, is the Catholic ministry for the service to the seafarers, fishers, and their family. It was founded 100 years ago in Glasgow. Last year we were supposed to celebrate the centennial, but unfortunately the COVID-19 pandemic stopped our plan. But for the past 100 years, our chaplain, our volunteers, they've been on the docks, on the port, helping, assisting seafarers, fishers, and their family spiritually and materially, according to the problem and the situation in which they find themselves.
And Father, I want to talk a little bit more about those who work on the sea. How are they doing amid the pandemic? How has it impacted them and the work that they do?
What we have to say is that while the world came to a standstill because of the pandemic, the maritime world continued to move. Ships, they keep sailing from one part of the world to the other to transport food, fuel, but also medicine, medical equipment. And we had a really big emergency when last year there were almost 400,000 seafarers that they were stuck at sea because it was impossible to do crew change because of the situation. The borders were closed. Planes, they were not flying, and so new crew cannot be brought on board, and the old crew cannot go home.
So tough. And Father, before I let you go, I understand a documentary was presented today that tells a story of the sea and fishermen. Can you talk to us more about that?
Yeah, last September 3, two Italian fishing vessels with a crew of Italian, Senegalese, and from Tunisia. They were hijacked, arrested by the Libyan militias, and they were brought to Benghazi. And for 108 days, they were kept prisoners. They were abused verbally and also physically. They didn't know what would happen to them because they were kept on the dark. And also the fishing vessel was completely emptied by the Libyan people from all the equipment for fishing. And these poor people, they stayed for 188 days in the hand of these militias. The Pope made a special appeal for them during one of the Angelus. And last year, on the 17th of December, finally they were released and they went home. And the fisher, they immediately expressed their desire to go and to say thank you to the Pope and to the Church, because we have been close to them, we have been supporting them in this difficult and darkest moment. Last year they couldn't come to Rome because of the pandemic, but finally now they can come. They already arrived in Rome, and tomorrow morning we will have a special audience with Pope Francis.
Well, Father Bruno, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for sharing all of that and for what you do. Father Bruno Ceccheri, Director of Stella Maris International, thank you again.
Thank you very much to all of you.
Up next, Finding Wellness, how faith can lead from addiction to recovery.
Deciding to adopt can be an exciting time, but also quite challenging. In his new book, Adoption, Should You, Could You, and Then What? Dr. Ray Guarendi, host of EWTN's Living Right with Dr. Ray, provides families straight answers to the most common adoption questions. The father of 10 adopted children, Dr. Ray uses his trademark humor and unique perspective to dispel many misconceptions and myths about adoption, with the hope of encouraging more people to consider this life-giving choice. In addition, it's filled with God-given guidance for parents who do adopt to help them be successful. Who knows where this book might take you? Adoption, Should You, Could You, and Then What? By Dr. Ray Guarendi, the latest release from EWTN Publishing, now available at EWTNRC.com or call 1-800-854-6316.
Can you hear that sound? The soft hum of the choir as they sing O Holy Night. The crib in view, a home that awaits you. Join us for carols by candlelight at Knock Shrine, streaming live to the world from Knock Basilica. Knock Shrine, praying with you and for you this Christmas.
Hello family, we'd like to invite you as we visit the various sites associated with our Savior's life.
We're told in the New Testament that God became man. So he was truly born of a woman, took human flesh. And at Christmas, we're reminded that God is drawing very close to us. He's coming to us as a child, and he's inviting us to love him.
Don't miss an EWTN Holy Land experience. Christmas, here on the Global Catholic Network. EWTN.
Our Christmas decorations are lighting up Egypt's capital of Cairo. A complete panorama is seen in the largely Muslim nation. There are 2 ancient Christian communities in Egypt which celebrate the feast of Christ's birth on different dates. Catholics keep Christmas on December 25th. Egypt's larger Coptic Orthodox Church follows the Julian calendar, celebrating Christmas on January 7th. All right, well, it is time to share more of your nativity scenes as we get closer to Christmas, just a few days away. And there seems to be a recurring theme here with pets. This one sent in to us by Leah Tomas Zuski in Middletown, Connecticut. And here is her therapy dog, Tippy. Leah says that Tippy even watches EWTN with her, so hello, Tippy. Patricia and Bill Shirk in Dallas, Texas, shows us their creche right here. It has a handmade stable and hand-painted figures. That is absolutely gorgeous. And finally, Arlene and Tony show us this nativity scene, which is set up in the center of their home as a reminder that Jesus is at the center of our lives. Yes, he is. And Merry Christmas to you all. Thank you so much for sending those in to us and to share your pictures. Please send them to EWTN News Nightly at EWTN.com or to our Facebook and Twitter accounts. Be sure to include your name and your location. And you could see your creche featured right here on EWTN News Nightly. And finally tonight, Evoke Wellness Massachusetts is an addiction treatment center focused on helping people recover from substance use disorders. Last week, Owen Jensen spoke to Jim Wahlberg, partner at Evoke Wellness.
And joining us now is Jim Wahlberg, partner at Evoke Wellness Massachusetts and author of The Big Hustle. Jim, welcome back. Great to see you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Very good. Well, let's get right to it. Tell us more about Evoke Wellness Massachusetts and its mission, please.
Yeah, so Evoke Wellness is a 64-bed addiction treatment center on the South Shore of Massachusetts, and it's actually in Cohasset, Massachusetts, and it's split between 32 acute detox beds, so that's the highest level of care. That's when folks are at their most vulnerable. They're under the care of a doctor. And then there's a residential program as well. That's a 30-day program, and that is also 32 beds.
And most of the addiction, most people are suffering from what type of addiction?
Well, it's a variety, but we have seen, obviously, the numbers when it comes to opioid addiction have been, staggering for probably the last 10 years.
And of course, everyone knows the pandemic has impacted everything right across the board. How has the pandemic, in your estimation, impacted people already suffering from addiction? How has it compounded it, if I may ask?
I don't think there's ever been one single occurrence that has affected addiction and mental illness more than the pandemic over the last almost 2 years. The thing about addiction is isolation, separation, depression, and recovery is the exact opposite. It's community, it's love, it's friendship, it's brotherhood, it's sisterhood. And so when folks were forced into isolation and then, the endless sort of barrage of the news, right? It was all gloom, all doom. That to me, it constitutes the perfect storm, if you will, for those suffering from addiction.
Now, I know you've experienced addiction yourself. I know it's very personal, but would you please describe what it was like for you?
Sure. Well, I got started at a very, very young age. I had my first drink when I was probably 8 years old, and I was fully addicted to alcohol and drugs by the time I was 12 years old. And things for me escalated at a very fast rate. But I want to say something. My escalation was, it started with alcohol, and then it went to marijuana, and it progressed. The older I got, it progressed to more dangerous drugs. I want to talk about young people today. Young people today are starting with the most dangerous drugs known to man. They're starting there. They're not progressing to it. They're starting there. And if this is a progressive illness, where do they progress to from there? It's never been a more scary time for young people and for families that have loved ones suffering from addiction.
Your faith, though, your faith. How did it help you during your recovery?
I want to just say one thing. My faith is critical in my recovery. My relationship with the Lord is paramount to my recovery. I've gone periods of time I've been clean and sober for over 30 years. And I got clean and sober in state prison in Massachusetts, where I had a conversion. Mother Teresa came to the prison that I was in, and my life changed from that point forward. But there were periods of time where I thought I could do it without my faith, right? That I could just not drink and drug a day at a time. And I was able to not use, but I was unhappy, right? That hole, that emptiness, that loneliness that sort of led me to the drink and drugs in the first place was coming back because I walked away from my faith, right? And so about 14 years ago, I went to a men's retreat, a Catholic men's retreat, and I was sort of beaten over the head a little bit to go. And I went thinking I would just get through the weekend and get the pressure off at home, but I ended up getting knocked to my knees. And I got the reminder that I needed, that this journey of life is hard enough, but it's impossible for me without my faith.
What other message would you share with those who are currently struggling, in addition to faith, that being the most important, obviously?
Obviously, that is the most important. But I want to say that, addiction is a disease of despair, right? But I want to say this, that nothing is too big for God, right? That recovery is possible. No matter what your circumstances are, recovery is possible. But it starts with making that first ask for help. And I want to say this too, a lot of times this is a disease that sort of, relapse for a lot of people has been a part of their journey, right? And I want you to know that no matter how many times you've tried to get recovery, that doesn't exclude you from the possibility of recovery, right? You got to get up, you got to keep trying. And I want to suggest to you that prayer is such a powerful tool in that process.
Absolutely. I think you hit it right in the head. And before we go here, I think you had a phone number in case anyone watching right now who is suffering from an addiction, a phone number you can share with us to get help right now, right this moment.
Absolutely. You can call us. There are many places that you can call, but you can call us here at Evoke Wellness, and that's 1-833-EVOKE-ME, 1-833-386-6356. And there's somebody there to answer the phone 24 hours a day. And if we can't help you, we'll certainly lead you in the direction of somebody that can.
Jim, thank you. And by the way, Merry Christmas, okay? Merry Christmas to you, and keep up the great work.
Thank you, and Merry Christmas to you as well.
All right, thank you.
God bless.
Thank you for your time today. We'll see you later.
And we are praying for all those who are suffering from addiction. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.
Behold, the timeless verse of the Christmas season. Sacred song that celebrates the light of the world. From the choir of the Eternal Word Television Network and Father Joseph Mary Wolf, the EWTN Family Christmas Special. This Christmas on EWTN.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.